Good morning, everyone. I'm going to take a couple of minutes today and go over the first CTE assignment. Hopefully, I sent out an email this morning about going through the module. And so hopefully by the time that you're watching this video, you will have already gone through this module on CTEs, what they are, the how-to video response, CTE response that I posted, and then as well as the sample CTE with the MLA format, like how to correctly set it up. All of that here is invaluable for you for the purposes of writing your CTEs. So you've done that. You've gone through those two things, and you're taking a look at your first assignment, which is on Elegy for My Father Who Is Not Dead by Andrew Hudgens. It's a poem. I chose this one specifically to go first because our first literary analysis essay, which is due the week after this, is on death and the speaker's views towards death. And so I thought that this was a perfect kind of warm-up assignment for that particular essay. So what I want to do today is give you just very specific help on getting started with Elegy for My Father Who Is Not Dead, and taking a look at that prompt and breaking it down. And then I also want to help you figure out what your next steps are once you have done all of that. So let's take a look at the poem first. And I go through in this assignment, in this screencast here, like just some text notes about it. I talk about the kind of breaking the poem down and whatnot. So I'm not going to go into all of that because that's already done for you. It's kind of redundant for me to go through it again. But just to kind of keep it fresh in your mind before we talk about the prompt and whatnot, then we'll go from there. Okay, so one day I'll lift the telephone and be told my father's dead. He's ready. In the sureness of his faith, he talks about the world beyond this world as though his reservations have been made. I think he wants to go a little bit. A new desire to travel building up, an itch to see fresh worlds or older ones. He thinks that when I follow him, he'll wrap me in his arms and laugh the way he did when I arrived on earth. I do not think he's right. He's ready. I am not. I can't just say goodbye as cheerfully as if he were embarking on a trip to make my later trip go well. I see myself on deck, convinced his ship's gone down, while he's convinced I'll see him standing on the dock and waving, shouting, welcome back. Okay, so it's very clear that we have these two views of death. A father's view of death greatly contrasts with what the speaker's view of death is. And so we know that that's going to be the major difference in our CTE. Like, how do you address both of those things? So let's take a look at let me just blow this up a little bit. I'm getting old, and so it's hard for me to see. Okay, so we know that what we're going to have to do is first figure out if we understand what the prompt is asking us to do. Do we understand all the terms? Do we understand exactly what it is that the prompt is asking of you, so that you can articulate your thoughts very well and fully answer that prompt? That's going to be the most important thing, is always making sure that you fully answer all the components of the prompt within your response. The prompt says, how does the speaker's view of death compare with those of his father? How does the imagery of the ship in the poem and the author's choice of diction help illustrate those views? Well, right off the bat, I know that I'm going to be talking about a comparison. So there are going to be contrasting views, or comparing views of death. So we know that there are going to be two separate views that we're going to be taking a look at that need to be addressed within our response. Then the second part of the prompt tells us specifically what literary elements we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at the imagery, specifically that of the ship, at the very end there in the poem, where the father is on the deck of the ship and the son is still waiting back on the dock. And then the author's choice of diction. So that is the word choice. So I know that all four of those things are going to have to be present in my CTE in order to fully answer the prompt. So the first step is always to turn the prompt into the claim. Writing a thesis statement, writing a claim, it's always the most daunting task, I think, for most people to come up with. Like, how do you tell your reader to start, because it's right there in the beginning, and all that first impression stuff. So the easiest way that I've always tried to teach my kids to do that is to just take the claim itself and turn it into take the prompt itself and turn it into a working claim, and then you can always build from there. So basically all I'm doing that's the sentence right here is just turning the prompt into a claim. The use of imagery and diction helps to illustrate the speaker and his father's views of death. Okay, at a baseline, that's exactly what the prompt is asking me to do, and that's what my claim, that's what I'm going to prove with my textual evidence and whatnot. So then I want to think about, how can I beef that up? How can I make it better? Okay, the first thing that I always do is go ahead and introduce my text and my author and my claim so that I can make sure that it's very specific to this. So the use of imagery and diction in Andrew Hudgens' Okay, now I've made it specific to the text. I've introduced my author so that I'm ready. Or you can do Elegy for My Father Who Is Not Dead by Andrew Hudgens if you want to do it that way. You can just flip it around. Either way, that is a good way to go ahead and introduce my author, introduce the poem, and then that's done for you there at the very beginning of your CTE. The next thing that I can do to kind of spice this up a little bit and make it a little bit more specific is be very clear that their views do not match. If I were comparing same to same, it would be one thing, but their views are different. So I can change, and just literally by adding one word, I can add contrasting views there to go ahead and indicate to my reader that their views are not the same. They're going to be different, and I'm going to be showing through my CTE how different they are. Okay. The next thing I can do is spice up my literary terms. I can add adjectives to the literary terms to kind of just help give it a little bit more pop, a little more oomph. Vivid imagery. And I can use purposeful diction. Okay, the use of vivid imagery and purposeful diction in Andrew Hudgens' Elegy for My Father Who Is Not Dead helps to illustrate the speaker and his father's contrasting views of death. Right there, I have a good working thesis statement, and it didn't require me to come up with anything other than just a couple of adjectives to just kind of spice it up, because what I did is I took that prompt and I turned it into my working claim. Okay, so now that I have my claim, now that I know exactly what it is that I'm going to be talking about in my paper, I'm ready to move on to the next steps. So the step 2, I'm going to add a follow-up sentence that succinctly summarizes those views so that my reader knows, like right off the bat, I've just said that they're contrasting views. I'm going to add in a sentence that's going to talk about how they are contrasting. And you can go about that many ways. And I just put a working one here that we can work from, or you can, just to kind of give you an idea. Obviously, you don't want to rip mine straight off the page. But the speaker's father feels ready and is accepting of his impending death, while the speaker is unsure. Okay? That's just a base level summary, and it's succinctly worded, which means I summed it up in as few words as possible that pack the most impact. You always want to think about that, how to get the most said in the least amount of words, because you don't want to be too wordy and too flowery. You want to save all of that really kind of for your explanation of your evidence once you get that done. Okay. Step 3, you got to locate textual evidence that supports your claim. That means that I'm getting my textual evidence. I know that there've got to be two different components. I know I need to talk about the imagery, specifically that of the ship, and the diction. And I need to pick specifically, purposefully, that best support those views of death. So I go back to my poem and I start pulling out imagery of the father's views of death, imagery from the speaker's views of death, and that can be those that ship and the deck kind of analogy there at the end. The diction, what specifically for the father's diction, or the word choice that supports the father's view of death, that he's ready and he's sure, and he's sure of his faith, and he's sure of where he's going to go. And then how do I do that same thing with the speaker's diction, the word choice that the speaker uses there to support his views of death. Step 4, turning the evidence into a well-developed paragraph, incorporating the textual evidence into your writing. Taking that, and you have that example one there from the flowers, where I'm going through pulling out textual evidence there for you in that screencast, and showing you how to kind of turn and fold that into my own writing while still giving credit to my author by using quotes and that kind of thing. On the essay resource help desk module, there are 2 really helpful screencasts on how to do that, how to incorporate textual evidence into your writing. One is on creating a quote sandwich, and the other one is 4 ways to help incorporate quotes into your writing. Both of those are really kind of invaluable, and you'll need them in the future. So I strongly suggest that you go and learn how to do that from the get-go here. And then step 5 is to compose a paragraph of explanation that articulates just how that textual evidence that you chose supports the claim. And that's what I did for you there in the flowers. You'll do the same thing here for Andrew Hudgens. In the CTE, is this the right one? Yeah, in the CTE module, I gave you this document, and it shows kind of a breakdown of a CTE, and then I gave you specifically like how to set it up. In your header, you're going to do on the right-hand side your last name and page number. We're using all Times New Roman 12-point font. No bold, no special funny fancy text, your first and last name, your 4 lines of student information, EH102, my name, the day, month, year, format for the date, your title, creating a creative title, and I gave you an example of a title, and then I just took that breakdown that I just put it together in 2 well-developed paragraphs, and then you'll notice that at the bottom I put a textual, I put a citation, and this particular citation for these first, for all of your CTEs and for your first 2 essays are going to come from the text that I have embedded into the modules, which is the Bedford Introduction to Literature. All the prints of the poems and the stories that you're going to be reading come from the Bedford anthology, which is this particular anthology. And so I'm going to go ahead and give you the one for Elegy for My Father Who Is Not Dead, with the correct page numbers, and I just pulled the page numbers straight from the text, which is here. Okay, so page numbers 1024 and 1025. Okay, and what I'm going to show you how to do really quickly is to set up your indentation, your hanging indent that you're going to need. So you start your citation on the left-hand side, and you'll start on the left-hand margin. You'll type your author's name, last name, that's a comma, last name, first name, period, then the title, and it's correctly punctuated the way that it needs to be. The period goes inside the quotation marks. The Bedford Introduction to Literature is always italicized. I use a comma, edited by Michael Meyer, Bedford St. Martin's, comma, 2016, comma, PP, which is pages, right? If it's just one page, it would just be P, right? And then 1024 to 1025, and then you put your period at the end. I'm going to have to stop this because I'm fixing to run out of time, and I'll pick right back up with another screencast.